Hey, belated Happy New Year to everybody out in internet land. Insert the usual excuses for being late. Seriously though, December I just kind of gave a wash, but then we lost an employee, my coworker, on Christmas Eve. So January has been a combination of me working every hour that we were open because I was it, and then training a new person who's working out well, but training is a process. So I'm still not having any full days off. I've just got like a couple mornings off a week. So yeah, my time has been very limited. Unfortunately, my voice lessons have also kind of been stalled out by that, but I'm hoping to resume them soon. So yeah, life got put on hold for the sake of work. But it was a good Christmas. I got lots of cool stuff. I got no less than 3 different hoodies, all from different people, just because the one that I wore 90% of the time was disintegrating. I think they were trying to tell me something. So I got, some good clothes. It's a new year. Cut my hair myself a second time. It's not great, but it's not terrible. So, yeah, I am still going to be trying to do fairly consistent, like once a month videos this year. I'm going to consider this my January video, which means I still owe one for February coming up soon. We'll just pretend this isn't the first. Yeah. So, as far as topics to talk about, I have been watching a bunch of TED Talks and stuff from transgender people, and I'd also been obsessing about David Bowie. So, some of that made me think about things. I was watching some TED Talks last night. Very good, very informative. A lot of them do seem to be teenagers rather than people my age. But they were very, very serious, very intense, a lot of them, which makes sense. But it did make me think. Somewhere online, I can't remember where, I saw a discussion or an argument, and it may be several places online, a number of places, but people run into a problem sometimes where they will be told that because they do not have gender dysphoria, or because they do not have enough dysphoria, and don't ask me who is supposed to be the objective judge of that, that they are not truly trans. Basically the concept that being transgender hinges on being uncomfortable, even miserable with your body. And what really gets neglected in that conversation is the flip side, which is gender euphoria. And I fully believe that you could be transgender and not necessarily have strong feelings of dysphoria. As somebody who transitioned later in life, I was awkward with my body for decades, but I wasn't miserable. I want people to understand that. I did not live a life where I was suicidal. I did not lead a life where I was just 24/7 wanting to scream when I looked in the mirror. When I looked in the mirror, I went, I don't know who that person is, but that's not as intense a dysphoric feeling as what some transgender people have. But the flip side of that is, as I have transitioned, I have gotten to experience transgender dysphoria. And looking back, I experienced this a number of times long before I knew that I was trans. What gender euphoria is when you get experiences that reinforce who you are, who you know yourself to be, and it's this moment of, oh, yes, yes, that's me. It's this sense of relief. It's this sense of affirmation. Every time I get called sir, there's a part of me that's like, yeah, that's me. I'm sir. I'm he. It's a good feeling. It's a positive feeling. And you can have somebody who doesn't have intense feelings of misery with who they are, but then every time they get some experience, like they get mistaken for the gender that they as a trans person actually feel like, they get this little burst of joy, this little feeling of, yeah, that's me. That's gender euphoria. You can have that and be trans. You don't have to be miserable beforehand. You may be a little bit awkward, but that can be a very detached feeling. And maybe that's part of depression too. I've had depression where I felt very detached, and it was almost a lack of feeling. So that wasn't necessarily dysphoric. A lot of it had to do with other factors that were making me depressed. But, you don't have to have this intense misery beforehand to be transgender. And I think that not bringing that gender euphoria into the discussion and focusing on how miserable you think somebody has to be before they transition in order to be accepted as trans, that really puts a negative spin on transgenderism, not just for younger transgender people who are still figuring themselves out, but for people who are not trans and trying to understand what the transgender experience is. You get these stories that focus on, look how miserable this person was and how terrible their life was. And then if you have somebody like me whose life was not terrible beforehand, does that discredit my experience? Does that make me less trans? It might make me less trans in the eyes of somebody who is married to this narrative that you have to feel a certain way before you've transitioned in order to be trans. So, gender euphoria is a thing, and I think maybe we need to talk about that more, talk about those experiences more. I said I've been on David Bowie kick the past month or so, and I grew up liking David Bowie. I mean, when I was a kid, I saw him in Labyrinth, and that got me interested in his music. So I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, listening to a lot of what he was putting out then. And really, fell in love with a lot of his music. And so a lot of it was revisiting music I was familiar with, but also discovering some stuff that was older than I was, that I just never got around to listening to before. And finally listening to some of his newer stuff after I kind of stopped paying attention to him, which is a shame. I wish I hadn't. But, reading about him and watching videos about him really brought home to me, now that I know who I am, how much he pushed gender boundaries. Whatever you want to say that he was, which he's gone now, so we will never get a definitive on that. He was somewhere in that LGBTQIA spectrum. There is no denying that he was not conformative in his gender presentation. One of his very early albums, right on the cover there he is in a long flowing dress with long flowing hair. And apparently there was a stunt where he and his then girlfriend, later wife, went out with her dressed up in very masculine clothes and him dressed up in very feminine clothes. And at the time it was very groundbreaking, but it was, when you break ground like that, then there are people who follow. And I grew up in the 80s and early 90s, and it was a really good time for being gender nonconforming. There were a lot of men out there with long hair, a lot of women with very short hair. I sometimes think some of the fashion and the gender presentations that I saw growing up in the 80s may have actually helped delay my realizing I was trans, be that for good or for bad. There were a lot of women out there with short haircuts, wearing big boxy blazers with the very almost, exaggerated, comically masculine boxy shoulders. There was a lot of women wearing men's clothing and acknowledging that it was men's clothing and that was why they were wearing it and that they were pushing a gender boundary there. So I grew up seeing a lot of that and wanting to embrace a lot of that, and that was considered okay because that was something that was happening around me. So it was interesting to me to revisit as an adult with an adult perspective and a trans perspective, seeing how that evolved. Because obviously when I was a kid, I didn't clue into how groundbreaking that was because I was surrounded by it. It was in all the music videos, all these celebrities. I grew up on a lot of Annie Lennox too, which on the flip side, she's not necessarily a typically presenting visually woman. How she feels about herself, I'm not making any guesses about, but she's got the short hair, she's got a somewhat masculine appearance. She wore a lot of suits in the 80s, and so I saw that and I absorbed that and I idolized that, and I thought, that is somebody that I could be. That is somebody that I would like to be. So that was something that was definitely an influence on me in my childhood, and I didn't understand until more recently why that clicked with me. But yeah, it's just interesting to look back on that. I don't know if other trans people closer to my age had those kind of experiences. So anyways, with that, I'm going to sing a David Bowie song today. Obviously, I haven't had a lot of time to prepare because I've been busy, so I just went back to one of the older ones that I basically have memorized and grew up with. One issue with singing David Bowie music for this is a lot of it is very dependent on the instrumentals, which obviously I don't have. Sooner or later in my voice lessons, I'd like to record a video so that I have the pianist accompaniment. But since that's not going to be happening for another week or two, then I'll get to that when the opportunity presents itself. Yeah. Man, I am so incoherent today. I needed more coffee, but I'm doing this quickly before I have to go to work, and obviously I'm feeling a little dysphoric today because of this shirt and what I keep seeing in the video there. I have a feeling that siren's going to make it on the video. One other thing that I've been working with my voice is my voice coach thinks that I might probably be more of a solid baritone. I thought I might be a bass, maybe not, although I can hit an awful lot of bass stuff. And he himself is a tenor, so it makes it very interesting to be taught by a tenor who can't sing as low as I can. Yeah, but he's having me sing in the tenor section of the choir that I've been singing with because I still have that upper range, and possibly in some ways I have that upper range better than a lot of cisgender men. So I'm trying to get comfortable with singing high and singing around my break again and getting control of my voice back around that area. I used to be able to exploit my break to do slides, and I feel like that control has kind of gone out the window a little bit. I'm slowly trying to get it back. I'm not quite there yet, so David Bowie, unfortunately, was also a tenor. So some of his stuff is a little high for me, so I think I'm going to drop this. But going forward, you may see me start to sing some songs going up again, trying to get comfortable with that range of my voice again, because I do still have the high end of my voice. My chest voice doesn't go as high as it used to, but my head voice seems to be relatively intact. I'm not sure if it goes quite as high as it used to, but probably pretty close. So I have a lot better versatility there than the average cisgender man does. So he's trying to teach me to use that, to use everything I've got, which is a good approach, and I'm grateful for that. appreciate that advice and that push in that direction that I wasn't going in on my own. But that's part of why I got voice lessons. So, without too much further rambling, I'll give a song and then sign off. Sorry, I'm having an allergy attack this morning too. That makes things fun. Stone love, she kneels before the grave, a brave son who gave his life to save the slogan that hovers between the headstone and her eyes, though it penetrates her grieving. New love, a boy and girl are talking, new worlds that only they can share with new words. A love so strong it tears their hearts to sleep through the fleeting hours of the morning. Love is careless in its choosing, sweeping over across a baby. Love descends on those defenseless. Idiot love will spark the fusion. Inspirations have I none, just to touch the flaming dove. All I have is my love of love, and love is not loving. So love, the priest that tastes the word untold of love, and how my God on high is all love. Though reaching up my loneliness evolves by the blindness that surrounds him. Love is careless in its choosing, sweeping over across a baby. Love descends on those defenseless. Idiot love will spark the fusion. Inspirations have I none, just to touch the flaming dove. All I have is my love of love, and love is not loving. Not great, but there you go. Gonna be working on that upper end. Obviously, I was straining on parts of the chorus. But there will be another video for February. I'll make it happen. Hopefully I'll be having more time off in the next month or so. Get myself down to an actual 40 hours a week. That would be awesome. I'll see you guys next month, later this month, next time. Happy New Year, and till next time.